I love all the prayers that our guests um, suggest. But I have to say that Cameron, you chose one of the coolest, and it's one that it's the first time I'm reading one that someone sends me, and I'm just like, I need to incorporate this into my daily stack immediately. So this is the opening prayer from the Ibn Arabi's book of the 7 Days of the Heart. Yeah, can you tell us a little about that? That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been getting more and more into the medieval Islamicate astrology, and in doing so, the way that I am, having so many planets in Capricorn and being really, really like just really making sure I do my best to honor traditions, even though
Mm,
I'm a bit of a rebel in some type of way, but there's just certain things that I just have always felt a deep reverence for. And so if I'm gonna learn that, then I need to learn also the culture that
mm,
comes from. And so
mm,
in learning the astrology, I'm also reading some books on Al-Ghazali and Ibn Arabi and a few other people from that time. I mean, also Ibn Sina, because I'm in Unani
mm,
Tibb school now as well. And I was like, okay, this is the 7 days of the heart. And I want this to be infused into my idea of my theurgic practice, and really the more that I read the prayers, the more I just was kind of with that, even more so than like, oh, I'm gonna do this because of the astrology. It was like,
right.
actually, I need to do this because my heart, and I can feel these prayers move through my body in a very particular kind of way, which is my main. I mean, that is probably everybody's main tool, but just being like a ex-athlete, just I need things to move through the circuitry of my body in a very particular way, and when I say the words, that's what happens to me.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the somatic grounding of all of these practices, and in many ways bringing to earth something so lofty as, divinity or the firmament of the stars is no better place to do it than the body and the heart. So,
Exactly, exactly, yeah, and even reminds me because before I started getting into any of these things, really, I worked with a bunch of youth, and a lot of the youth that I work with, they would always rock back and forth. And it just was like that was their way of, like, fully bringing in all the experiences they were having in the present moment into their body so they could digest and metabolize it, and it corresponded nicely with the fact that I was about to start a Kundalini Yoga teacher training soon after too as well, and we always do rocks in that training as well, so I always, like, feel into prayers and what people are saying and just try to, like, get real quiet and see if I start to feel like I wanna rock to it, and that's, like, a really good indicator of, like, something true moving through.
How beautiful! Like just have that somatic response to know that like something is digesting and is moving through you. Um, Occultism and magic is such a for a lot of people it's a very head heavy practice, right? It's a very mental. It's very in the mind. We're excited to learn things. We're excited to receive information. We're excited to integrate it, and sometimes that excitement. For me, I've been on a huge somatic kind of journey of learning to embrace my body more over the last few years, both in terms of my magical practices, in terms of actual like somatic therapy I've been experiencing, everything. And it's just been such a shift to go from like, I'm cognizing this and playing with it to I'm living it. And that's not something you can rush. It's something that just comes with repetition. So even that rocking that you're referring to, like I'm flipping through the book right now and seeing like the evening and morning prayers for each planet, or rather, for each day, and just the beauty of like what a way to dedicate yourself to making sure you're waking up on going to bed on time, right? Because you're greeting the sun as opposed to just there's a way that it's incorporated, not just like I did that as like a check mark, but like I'm taking my time to read the prayer slowly and letting it like diffuse through me, and orienting myself towards creation in such a way that will mark the rest of what you do that day.
Exactly, and I had to essentially come back around to the body because I definitely like, 'cause I yeah, people don't even know, I started out a long time ago working at a spiritual supply store, and back then, I wasn't really into anything occult or astrological really so much, and there were so many people that would come in the store or in the shop and just tell me what they thought was true, and so I had to just because I was skeptical about it, and, well, I was wise to be I was discerning really now that I look back on it, and what I learned was just to experiment with anything, everything with, like, just a little bit of caution, to be quite honest. but I would just
Mhm.
experiment with everything all the time, and then it was later on that I started being a bit more scholarly, and yeah, it definitely took me out of, like, my just pure knowing, and it took me into my mind a bit because back then too, when I was working at the herb shop, I started working with the herbs. Well, it's a spiritual supply store, but I started working with the herbs, and the way in which I allowed myself to care for myself was almost every single night after I got off work, I would make a tea, go into
Mhm.
my bathroom, put in headphones, turn the lights off, and just drink the tea until I felt like the tea started drinking me, where I started understanding, like, what's really going on here, how is my body responding, and so I started collecting a database of attunement, I guess we could call it.
Beautiful. You have all this, like, a literal library of, like, reference materials so that you know how your body reacts to different things and experiences, like, different, like, psychic phenomena, so that way when you feel it later on, you can kinda, like, reference it.
Exactly, yeah, and it's like somebody walks into the herb like, it was only a matter of time before someone would walk into the herb room, and I would get that quiver in my liver that
Mhm.
is the signature of burdock speaking to me and through me. And so,
Mhm.
even sometimes I would know what herbs to give people based off of that, as well as, like, studying and, like, learning the correspondence of certain personality types to different herbs.
Beautiful. I think that's one of those things that helps us take seriously both the physicality of medicine, like, what is its embodied, like, what is the body of the plant spirit marigold? It's the marigold plant. Um,
Mhm.
Whereas also, like, detaching it from the raw materialism, but actually, what is the way that this signature or this particular spirit acts on the body, even apart from its physical embodiment as well. Like, I love that you just immediately were like, okay, I get that sense of readings. A client, I would even before they come like to me, I'll already have a sense of what they're going to ask, or I'll have a sense of what the issue they may be having, or even as they're expressing and they give their question, how they're reading, I'm like, I'm getting some weird somatic feelings in my body in this way. Let me ask them about that, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, that is something that I'm dealing with, and then like I see when my spirits are pushing for that because they're trying to show me some things are connected that the client themselves are maybe not necessarily receiving as connected.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was a whole journey of figuring out how to deal with that, right? Like somebody walks into a room and my knee starts to ache a little bit. It's like, is this okay for me to even
Mm,
experience this? Or like, what do I do with this? And yeah, the shaking for me always just, yeah, it's always been like my clearing practice essentially. It's like, yeah, just the animalistic nature of when a dog is scared and it just walks away and shakes, and like that just being like the most practical Capricorn stellium that I am, practice to remove any energy that feels like it's not serving me.
mhm,
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And like even in the kind of like academic, um, like medical and medical psychiatric field of it, like the amazing way that that's able to mitigate symptoms of like traumas, of reduce the incidence of PTSD, reduce the incidence of other anxiety related behaviors and things like that. Like there's all of these things are converging back onto the knowledge that we had all along stored in the body, stored in like the base parts of the brain, the nervous system. And I think it's as more of these modalities pile up, then the more self-evident almost these things become.
Yeah. Yeah. That
mm,
feels right. Yeah. And I also think about it oftentimes is if I have trauma, as let's call it for this moment, stagnant information within my nervous system, then this also will modulate my attunement to be able to receive imprints and messages from things. And so the more that I move that out and somatically metabolize it, I also now have more space for listening to the whispers that my nervous system is needing to pick up.
yeah, 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 yeah. There's more room for those signals to even be acknowledged, and they even feel. I have experienced that they are almost able to be more visceral because they know that will be heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm, beautiful.
Be not alarmed at the frightful howls which you may hear. It's Svinga,
Hello.
and blasted by Alkindi's ray gun key.
we were Cameron, we were struggling to think of one. So it was like, oh, it could be like a beholding the earth and the heavens and the moon and the stars key. And he was like, no, I wanna get hit right in the face with the rays.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a little bit.
Oh, that's it'll align his chakras.
Yeah. It's just beams and rays and lasers.
Yeah, I like how what the Alkindi rave. Yeah. We've been partying too much. Like,
Yeah.
it goes to show where our brains have been. I think I would definitely enjoy
I think
our medic rave though.
Alkindi's theory of rays would be reified by going to like EDC or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he would shit.
Let's take grandpa to the rave. If you and also if you want to come rave with us or at least discuss them, you can check out our patreon.com/the Frightful House. We have a bonus episode every month curated by and just for our patrons, lovingly described as a Frightful House After Dark. It's a Q&A, and you can ask whatever questions on your beautiful little hearts. We got a Discord where we chat all kinds of things: pets, plants, magic, techniques, discussing a lot about the Four Kings lately, actually, in Grimoire practice. A monthly live occult book club where we discuss a text of your choosing, or show or movie. We just did Freyren, the anime. Show notes for every episode, and a whole tier of monthly group spell work from us on your behalf.
And while you are there, also remember to give us a like, a rating, and a review on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you might be listening to us. Shoutouts to the Podbay heads, the Stitcher heads, whatever feed you are receiving this strange frequency. It helps us to fight the demiurge of the algorithm.
Indeed, and check out our services while you're at it. Key offers personalized coaching in magic and mediumship, sorcery for hire, readings, and custom talismans, oils, and tools. I offer Balkan 5 Mancy readings, and both of us offer occasional limited occult wares over on withcunningandcommand.com.
And lastly, be sure to hit us up on social media. We are people that you can talk to. Send us messages, send us memes. Svinga is at Dragon Cunning, and I am at Barnell.key.
And we have a guest, a good friend, and long time. We've been waiting for this moment, I would say. Cameron Allen, well, please welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. And yeah, what a blessing. I've just been soaking in since we first met, like all the episodes, and oof, I'm fully caught up now for sure. I'm super grateful to be here because it's really been so deeply enriching to the way in which I think about the occult and magic in general, especially as someone who has worked at a spiritual supply store for a really long time. There wasn't things that were feeling so up to par for my liking. It was interesting because it would be like, I know I don't know, but I know this ain't it. And so nice to be here because I'm like, okay, this is it. And so I'm just feeling really blessed to be here.
Thank you so much, Cam. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're huge fans of your work, and really excited that we've had this plan for months in advance. So we're so excited to sit down with you and pick your brilliant mind about so many things. Before we get into it, let's just give you a few quick plugs. So, folks, Cameron can be found at cadreamplanet.com, cadream6.substack.com. Instagram is cadream6, and the link tree is also cadreamplanet. You can check out Cameron's services. There's a lot. You offer so much, and it's I'm so excited to have you as one of our astrologers we send people to. In addition to consultations and solar returns and all these kinds of things, you do holistic herbal consults and a huge astrological wellness program for multiple weeks and medical astrology readings. And today we'll be talking about medicine astrology and medicinal practices in astrology, which is something that you'll I want to give you the floor, like maybe introduce yourself a little bit to our audience so people know what your background, what your training is, how you kind of got involved in this whole mess that we found ourselves in the occult, and then we'll start talking a little bit about health and how that fits into the training that you do have.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. And yeah, so where do I start? Yeah, I guess I'll go back to what I was saying about working at a spiritual supply store. And It was a very precarious way that I got there. I won't tell that long, drawn out story, but I was working with a teacher. I met a teacher right before I started working there, and we did what's called a despacho. And we did we had a sit down with some cacao, and she asked me what was it that I wanted to do with my spiritual life. And I almost had no clue, but I said, for now, I want the material world, the mundane things to move out of my way so that I can enter into my spiritual path if it is there for me. And 3 days later, I was fired from my job, and 4 weeks later, I started working at a spiritual supply store. And so that's kinda like how it all started. And before then, even I already had a degree in health and sports science and psychology, so some of these things were already near me in the way that I would end up working with them moving forward. Because working at the spiritual supply store, there was a lot of women who practice hoodoo, because I live in Memphis, Tennessee, so there's a lot of women who
Mm,
practice hoodoo, and they tend to be very hush hush, but for some reason, it felt like they were always opening up to me and saying, like, because they knew I was new because they had been around for so long, and so they would just give me little tidbits of advice, little secrets of the trade, essentially, and it always just, like, piqued my interest even though I was way more interested in health and herbs. And actually, back then, I was definitely a big gem guy back then.
mm,
I was
mm.
working with crystals a lot back then, and I was still coming out of my football player bro mode, so I would always pick the strongest crystals, right? It's like me and my hubris, and I'm like, "I'm gonna I guess I'll work with clear quartz, but let's get a moldavite. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
do."
yeah. Straight from the sky.
And soon after that, I was like, "Okay, like, moldavite is a bit much, so let me get something to ground this, but also let me work with that only at particular times when things are clear." And so, I just went through a trial and error process of figuring out, what do herbs do? What do these essential oils do? What do these magical oils do? What do these candles do? And actually just doing basically, I would say 6 to 7 years of experiments where I also had access to, like, asking people questions. So if I could pick up a gem and see if I could see an image in my mind, and then I would give it to the person and ask them, "What do you feel? What do you see?" And just flexing the muscle, unbeknownst to me back then, but realizing later on, I was flexing the muscle of a way of knowing, and just, like, piling on ways of knowing throughout my process of being in the spiritual supply store. And one of the first things that I also remember that imprinted me very strongly was working with herbs and having different dreams, and they were just basically directing my life at a certain point. And so, yeah, even now that I'm saying this, I feel like usually when I talk about, like, how I got here, I'll say, "Oh, like, I'm in my last year of Ayurveda school. I'm in my first year of Unani Tibb," which is Greco-Arabic medicine for people who don't know. They also call it Galenic medicine or Islamic medicine. And I got, like, 200 hours in Kundalini Yoga. It's like I kinda go down this list, but I'm even feeling right now the true process has been the direct experience of encountering these different ways of knowing through the plants and the people and the gems and the stars, and picking up a double terminated quartz in the middle of the night and going outside and pointing it towards a star and asking them to just show me,
Mm,
and allowing this to be the way in which I started to understand things, before I got a little bit more scholarly. So I would say that's a rundown that I'll stop that rundown right there. But those are some things that feel like really, really alive, for me, and really just knowing, yeah, for people who don't know, like, I think my work is really about how all these things meet the body and keeping everything really, really simple. So for people who are already into the occult and magic, just helping them attune to, what does your food taste like, and does it make you say, "Mm," or does it make you say, "Ugh?"
yeah,
And letting that fine tune and refine your way of knowing through your body and through your senses. I think that is the peak of what it actually is that I do. It's like allowing to allowing yourself to listen to the whispers of the nervous system, and knowing that it's not just the whispers of the nervous system, but the information that is all around us all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. I think the just the way that um it it's kind of funny, but the way you embody embodiment in all of your practices, um,
Mhm.
'Cause these
is
skills are transferable.
right,
Mm.
is a really, valuable and admirable thing because, like you were mentioning, like, a lot of these practices can get, um, kind of heady and abstract, and I think especially in the world of astrology where things can be a little more, we'll say conceptual or mathematical relations or kind of like derived relationships. It's really important to be anchoring that in, okay, how does this actually feel? How is this affecting the world materially and tangibly, and even in the extant spiritual ecology around you. Um, so I'm always happy to hear and really admire in your work, like how much you bring it back to just the body and like, okay, use the senses you have and just ask yourself like, okay, I've intellectualized this, but how am I feeling?
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's important to know where you come from, right? Like, even what you were saying, like, through this process of meeting women who do hoodoo and working at the supply store and getting a sense of like, okay, you know what it's like to spend money on something that like is powerful, but it's not necessarily the tool for the job at the moment, right? Like, I think about I've definitely been in your shoes when you're mentioning the whole experience with Moldavite. I think there's something to. I mean, you have so many. Just even between Unani Tibbs and just actually studying like the real history of healing and of like plant medicine, holistic astrological medicine in the tradition that has informed what we now call the West. And it's still unbroken. It's just that people don't know as much about it as they do, let's say, Ayurvedic or Chinese. There's something there to think about, like um, how do we make this digestible? And you have that experience, and you were there in the spice store. You were there meeting people from all kinds of walks of life and starting to realize in your body, like you were saying earlier, like why might they need this herb specifically, even before you analyze them.
Right, yeah, and also, like, in that shop, interacting because living in the Bible Belt and interacting with people
Mm,
who like, the amount of people who have come to the herb room and said, "Are you" and asked me if I was a witch doctor is, like
right.
it's, like, absolutely, stunning, really, to be quite honest, and so, also being able to just translate and transmit things to people beyond just how I think they should be framing it or looking at it. I think that's actually the basis of how I've even gone into thinking about astrology being medicinal. I guess it's really just how can we experience things to in order to, like, yeah, gather a database that allows anything and everything in any present moment to begin to become more medicinal. And yeah, it's just been a beautiful thing. It's just got me reflecting so much on all the things that I've experienced. And yeah, and it goes to like planetary days. I remember I first heard about planetary days and I didn't really take in people's opinions about it or what I should or shouldn't do about it. So I just started behaving like the planet on those days. And so it's funny because started becoming very, very obvious because everybody that would work with me, the shop would open on Tuesdays. We were open Tuesday to Saturday, and people wouldn't talk to me for probably like the first half of Tuesday every week because I would be kinda in like a little like a aggro kind of state of being. And it's just interesting how it just influenced the space that I was in, and it also allowed me to not only build a relationship with the planets, but also to see how the iterations of the planets wanna move through the spaces that I was in, again, in my body, which I will probably say like 1,000 more times, in my body. Yeah.
Mhm, no, no, for sure. I remember I was going through like a whole planetary um a procedure for a little bit in 1 year of university, and exactly what you were saying. Like on Tuesday when I would come in, because I would do something in the morning and something in the evening, I would hit like that early morning hour. And then when I get home from university, I would hit the evening one, and it was definitely like there was that middle period when it kind of faded, where people would talk to me because they were like, "You seem very competitive right now," and I'm like, "I feel great. What are you talking about?" And then I had to step back and be like, "Oh yes, of course, I haven't fully figured out how to move through that quite yet."
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it was very
Totally.
interesting. And also even it was also even interesting seeing, like, people who only came in on certain days. and then later on receiving reflections from those people about who they supposed that I was, and hearing, like, the reflection in the fact that they only came in on Wednesdays. It was yeah, oh my
They got a very different vibe on a Friday.
right.
Well, I would love to know, how did you get started in astrology then? Like, that's how in the context of how I met you, at BGS,
Mhm.
had lots of really beautiful conversations. I'm really curious to know, like, what got you started and especially since you have a background in sports science as well, like, how did you kind of let these passions meet?
Yeah, so when I first started working at the spiritual supply store, going towards herbs was just a natural inclination because it had to do with health. And so that started it was as if my health and sports science degree started becoming herbalism essentially, or started infusing with the herbalism, and again, like, through working with the plants, they were starting to tell me what I need to do essentially. So when I was drinking some tea, specifically, it was almost always passion flower. It would always tell me, like, "Oh, you need to learn about the plants and the planets," or "You need to do this, you need to do that." And so that was my first introduction into, like, fully going into astrology. It was through the lens of medical astrology and just looking at books and just reading the plant to planet correspondences and just contemplating that and, like, drinking the tea at night again, like I was saying before, and just feeling like, "Why are they saying this?" And then also going and studying the morphology of the plant and just trying to understand what did they mean by this plant rules this planet, because there's never really that much instruction on why they chose those things. And so then I went out to search for a teacher that taught in that manner. And so I met my teacher, Saja Popham, at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and I started working with um, uh, something called Botanical Constellations. And back then, he was giving out a spagyric every single month for each zodiac sign. And for people that don't know, spagyric is alchemical preparation that the one I specifically had was combining the mineral salts of a plant, the essential oils of a plant, and then the spirit of the plant, which is its own ethyl alcohol, and then he will put them back together. And then through that process, you start to take it during a specific zodiac sign, during a specific season, and then the plant starts to work through you in the same or a similar process. And so that was my introduction to astrology, and just looking having a plethora of books to look through, I would look at a bunch of books, and back then I had a certain lean mentally, and so all the traditional astrology books, I just didn't vibe with them at all back then. And because also at the time I was working with a lot of people who had trauma, and I had just got done working at a facility for youth that had trauma as well. And so then I found evolutionary astrology, which had a stronger lean towards like with it, like the life moving through the soul moving through different lives, and it felt like it had a more emotional psychological depth to it. And so I started learning that as well. So I started having the psychology be my astrology, and I had the herbalism being my health and sports science, and those things continuously began to infuse into one another until they started being inseparable. And then years moving forward, I got on Twitter, and there were so many people in traditional astrology who were just, like, very combative to the fact that I was like, I was all, like, proud of myself. I was like, "I practice evolutionary astrology," and people are like, "Oh, that's not even a serious practice of astrology," basically.
Mm.
And I was just like, "Wait, what?" Like, there's no way that all these times I've attuned to these things and spoken these words to people, and they broke out into tears and told me they've never been seen in this way. There's no way that this isn't real or true. And then but it piqued my curiosity, so I started going down the route of learning traditional astrology, from the Hellenistic, from Renaissance, and now the Medieval Islamicate, coming forward more closer to the present moment. And so, yeah, that's kinda how I got into astrology.
That's awesome. Yeah. I was so interested, we've had her on many times on the podcast now, but our really good friend Maria, who does, kind of the Chinese version of that, right? And, like,
Mhm.
I very much am I never recommend somebody unless I'm really confident in what they do, and, like, with her, I've never experienced, like that was my first, like that was my first experience directly with what you're talking about. Like, that was my foothold into it, was seeing how, like, Chinese medicine, the traditional and classical Chinese medicine, especially in conjunction with understanding someone's humors, understanding someone's astrological proclivities, understanding the effects of, the stars on them, could help create a holistic, um, kind of map for healing that is overall wellness, that isn't something that will also benefit your spirit mediumship, your contact with the beings that you work with, your ability to kind of be an agent in the world, the ability for the magic that you do to have a better result on you because you're more like vigorous and vibrant in your reception of it. Um, so after, like, when we started talking, I was like, oh, I actually feel like, even though I'm not an astrologer myself, I feel like I actually understand that on a deeper level now because I can meet with that and kind of like I know what that was like for me benefiting from it.
Mhm.
And I can see just how valuable it is because so often in our society, we treat things based on just acute symptoms, but never the kind of holistic approach to like root causes and also like embodied, as you were saying, like embodied trauma patterns as well.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, like the first thing that I invite people to think about or feel into is just the nature of the moon and how the moon represents the womb, but it also can represent the mother, but it also can represent one's ability to absorb nourishment or not. And it also corresponds to someone's emotional and psychological feeling of security or lack thereof. It's also the planet that represents the body more than any other planet in the chart. And so just with feeling into and thinking about and working with the moon, there's so many different layers and patterns that or even approaches that we can take into helping someone allow the the sublunar spheres to like move through their body. And I really do always like starting with the moon because of that very thing. It's like, how is this flowing through your being? And that's always going to help with somebody's magical and occult practices. But it also can help with wounds that we have around feeling uncomfortable or insecure, or things even having to do with the mother's lineage, as well as many other things in that chart, as many know.
Mhm. It's a really beautiful point that you make about the ability to receive nourishment and receive care being found there.
Mhm.
Because a lot of like the healing modalities that I've either experienced as a patient or been trained in as a practitioner, it's like the person that you are treating has to be able to receive treatment. Like they have to be able to receive and integrate the medicine that is being prescribed. Like if you give them a prescription, it could be perfect prescription, but if they don't take it, then nothing's going to happen. So the whole thing of like, I think it's a really great point and like a really good piece of advice for to look at of like, yeah, start there, see if the person can even receive what you're trying to give.
Yeah, exactly. And I had to learn that really hardcore, really fast because the community that I work with, like, I could have like high-minded philosophies and say really like interesting psychological words with my degree, and people would just pretty much be like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And so it's something I absolutely had to learn, like how to deliver medicine and how to like walk on the ground and like, yeah, allow the mother, which is earth, to like show me how to let that move through me. Yeah, it's so important. It's so vital because I could make the greatest medicine in the world, and it could be a tincture, and somebody could come in and say, "Oh, I can't work with alcohol." And so, like, what am I gonna do in that moment? And what route am I gonna take with them? And yeah, again, like this just I'm just really even I'm like feel like I'm like coming to like a aha moment because I'm always so in the present moment and not reflecting on these things as much as one might think. And it just makes me realize so much. It's like, oh wow, I was just always building up a medicine cabinet, and it's not even so much about the medical astrology, but becoming medicinal myself. And so
Yeah.
therefore anything that I touch becomes medicalized moving forward. So yeah, like my conversations can be medicine. My astrology is going to be medicine. My herbalism is going to have an extra healing component to it. And
Mhm.
just yeah, it's even just blowing my mind right now that I'm even not necessarily working with any particular particular deities that are like geared towards healing, in that manner because it's as if all the planetary forces and all the plants they are the spirit. There it is. Okay, yeah. They are the spirits that move with me in order to invoke and share healing and all the things that I do.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a good point. I think that a lot with people who commit themselves to priesthoods. Um, it's not in isolation. Like, yes, you may only be a priest of certain kinds of spirits in certain contexts. That's true. But if you're dedicating your life to becoming a healer, you're going to heal in secular environments. You're going to heal in environments that are not necessarily the one of which you're strictly a priest of. Like if you're orienting yourself as a healer or a reader or someone who dispenses wisdom for whom spirit messages may sometimes come through, and it has nothing about you. It has everything to do with that one moment where you meet that one person. Maybe you can make some kind of impact. It's your body is becoming a conduit for well, healing that is not even your business, to even understand fully or know. It can just be in that one moment that you can touch someone's life, and I think that's so. Um, it's you were saying about that like moon and the mother, but like how we expect to receive care and also the wound, and when our mothers have not always been given us the care that we needed, becomes a way that we interact with how we give care to others. And all of us will perpetuate that kind of cycle on some level, but it's all of our responsibility to address it. I think I remember once I was talking to a friend who's an astrologer, and they were telling me like, think about your think about your moon and what sign it is, and also what the house is in, and think about like what does that mean for what is the care that you need? Well, literally was how they phrase it. Like, what is the thing that without how are your needs met so that you can actually achieve the goals of your son? And it was fascinating to think about it that way because it really put me into a lot of deep thought about like I often say this in the podcast, like I think we are also spirits. We just happen to have human bodies and we need offerings too, I mean, not just
Mhm.
food and but also in literal affection and praise and appreciation. We all have different kinds of offerings that we need. And what is it for have those needs met so that we can give the kind of care that maybe and take responsibility in building the kind of care towards ourselves, even if we didn't receive it. And to not necessarily feel sorry for ourselves, but more to um, be elated at the agency that comes when you can accept that you can do something about it.
Mhm. Yeah. I feel that so much, and yeah, even as I, like, am ruminating slightly on all these things, is being mindful with yeah, people, like, needing to be mindful about, yeah, the relationship with the spirits of the land and connection with the spirits of the celestial spheres and how they're not really separate in that way, and I know a lot of people here who are listening probably already feel that and somewhat know that, but I just strongly recommend people to not get too caught up in their head when they think about astrology because that is the thing that has been the only thing that takes me away from being medicinal, I think, actually, in my practice is going too much into brainy scholar mode and that
Mm,
pulling me away from the spirits of the land who were the ones who rooted me and taught me how to even listen to the language of the stars.
that's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and something else with medical astrology, just having people consider, the elements and just, like, do you have 2 things in your own elemental medicine cabinet that can decrease earth in your body or in a situation if you're doing an operation, or 2 things that can increase earth, 2 things that can decrease water, 2 things that can increase water, air, fire, and ether if you work with that one as well. Because I find that in that contemplation and embodiment, that also begins to infuse into how you talk to which spirit, which like, how do you talk to people? How do you eat your food? What pace do you eat your food? How many workouts a week do you do? How many of them are fluidic? How many of them are
Mm,
intense? How long do you stay in the squat position and allow
uh,
yourself to feel strong rather than wanting and looking to be strong?
right.
And yeah, just like I think that is like really where I would invite people into moving towards a more medicinal form of astrology and then into like medical astrology proper. Like that would be the root or the basis of how I'd invite people to like start to like lean in just a little bit because even if somebody didn't want to be a medical astrologer, just hearing that and feeling into that, I know people are going to start to like receive that as a transmission, and their own personal intelligence and genius will start to activate in that process.
Right, like their own inspiration. Yeah, their ability to receive that medicine that you and Key were saying. I think about that a lot. Like I started really taking fitness serious in the last few years, and I started going to the gym pretty regularly. And exactly what you're referring to with the squat, like it happened to me. Like all I could think about was like, well, I want the number to go up. You know, now that I have a goal, like I want to see the number go up, and that's very visually pleasing to me. I want to see a physical change in my body. I want to experience getting stronger. And it was Maria who really, because she was my workout partner. Like she would sit me down and be like, okay, how about we focus on your feet being grounded? Like she started me on free weights so that I could build the ability to balance, really. So that no machine and no bar was doing the work for me to balance. Like it was all me. And that way, like once I got confident and I was like, what is it to be thankful that I can move in this way, to be thankful that I'm growing in this way, to like sit in that way that where it's not a performance, even for not necessarily for a different person, but for myself.
Mhm.
And that's something that I think a lot about when it comes to scrying or it comes to working with spirits, is that we are often our own voyeurs. You know, we're looking at ourselves. And I think social media is to do that, right? We look at ourselves through the prism of another eye. And there's nothing wrong with, you know, some good vanity and some good, you know, excitement in that way. But it's more in the sense of policing is what I'm referring to. Can the gaze be appreciation and not police? And I think that that's something where everything has to be edited and curated and look a certain way to, you know, fit a certain mold. But what you're saying is like get to the um start with like the very basics of like, can you appreciate that you are building a block of skill, like, or you know, Key does mediumship coaching, and something that I always think back to your example in our coffee episode where you were talking about like, well, you know what vanilla tastes like, and you've tasted it before, and you know it in ice cream, you know it in pastries, you know it in your coffee. So when you're tasting for a vanilla note, it's not that the coffee has literal vanilla in it. It's that there's not a syrup in the actual bean, but it's that you're asking the sense memory of vanilla. To compare to what the initial first hit of the coffee taste, and usually the first one is right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then people psych themselves out and go like, "It's too simple. It can't be vanilla on the tasting note." And then turns out it is.
Yeah. I think with all of that, yeah, we, be it our own healing, our own practices, our own, um, ability to perceive spirits or the stars or the earth, or our own bodies, we become our own worst enemies many times where, um, we tell ourselves the mind, like the ego tells itself like, oh, this must not be correct. Whereas, maybe the body, maybe some other sense is being like, no, this is already here. Um,
Mm.
so I think like, you know, when do you feel a certain way versus when are you like really embodying that thing? You don't have to think about it. You don't have to rationalize it. You don't have to even emote it. You just are.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, oftentimes when I'm working with people, especially it's really exciting when I get to work with people in Memphis because I can work with their chart while also working with them like in the park and with their bodies,
Mhm.
and just like people will I'll give somebody an instruction, and sometimes I'm like just allowing them to show me how they feel about moving, and they'll be like, "Am I doing it right?" And I'm like, if you slow down and stop thinking about it and feel about it, then oftentimes that gets people to, like, really, be able to, like, yeah, just be with what's true in the moment and not even necessarily question, "Is this right or wrong?" But maybe a better question is this true right now?
Mhm.
Because a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people wanna start at conclusions, and I find that to be, yeah, like, really problematic with any of this type of work. Even with all the people that I've worked with, I might have an assumption that a particular herb or the particular remedy in the chart is showing up, but when I actually allow myself to be with the truth of the matter, sometimes other things pop up, and I think that's like a whole muscle and a skill to cultivate, being able to be with something or be with the truth rather than start at a conclusion.
Yeah. I think that, that level of mental flexibility is really important to cultivate, where it's not just trusting yourself in the beginning, it's trusting yourself in the process and trusting yourself to
Mhm.
edit and make changes and be like, admit that maybe you were wrong or admit that you were right or that something needed to be changed or that something in the process of healing the person, you uncovered a deeper layer that while what may have been the right remedy earlier now that we know this other stuff is going on, we got to change it up. Um, and I think like that it gets back to that point earlier of like, what do you do when you commit to like a priesthood or commit to a path of healing? You are the one who has to heal yourself more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the time, why do people get initiated to things? Why do people become priests of a thing? It's because they need the strongest version of that medicine possible themselves. And
Yeah.
I think as you kind of develop that, it's that eternal commitment that like it's like taking that, the sphagiric tinctures or anything like that. Whatever you're doing out in the world is going to affect you as well. Like whatever you're healing in someone else, you're going to have to confront all those shadows, all that, baggage, all that benefit or whatever it may be inside yourself to really deal with this other person. So I don't know, hard medicine, but with all the integration, I think it's a really good way to think about it and make that like an exciting thing to confront and challenge and treat as part of the journey and part of the fun of doing all this.
Yeah, even the people that you meet will be part of that healing for you, like who you end up becoming the teacher of, or who you end up becoming the reader of, may end up healing something in you just because of that relationship that develops.
Absolutely. So well said. Feeling that.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that would be like my introduction for people into medical astrology, just so we don't get too lost in the world of thought about it. Because when I enter into it from like a more, let's say, scholarly perspective, the first thing that we want to learn is about mind body types, which is to say constitutions, or temperament, or we call it mizaj. And then in Ayurveda, they call it the doshas. So just beginning to learn mind body type and how to see that in a chart, because if you can see it in a chart, then it'll allow you to know a plethora of things. You can learn how someone might orient in relationships. I know I was reading a book from Al Ghazali, and he was saying people who do childcare should never be allowed. Like, if you do childcare, you should only be allowed to do childcare if you know temperament.
Mm,
Because if you don't know temperament, you're not gonna know how to care for each child individually, and so it
mm,
gets down to that layer and that level. So if I know, okay, this person is talking to me about relationships and they have this specific mind body type, then they'll have an inclination towards a certain direction, that they'll have a tendency or propensity to have issues in relationships. And it just starts to get really, really clear. So the medical part of the astrology, the medicinal part, instead of it being medical astrology, it's medicinal in that it's teaching someone how to be in relationship, even if it's just how they're being viewed by another person. Because sometimes somebody could be, let's say, fiery, and they don't understand that they're when they assert themselves, it's penetrating and it's sharp. But what happens when they understand that, so they can see that more clearly, so that they can smooth or round the edges off? That's gonna help their relationships, and that's gonna bring more healing, because it's gonna allow them to have more connection in their life. And even more than that, it's like, how does that also correspond to the fact that you need to chill out on eating all that spicy food?
yeah, yeah, that's a really good point too. Even just thinking about like looking at my experience is more with the Chinese side of things, but like through area, but like the humoural aspects of like your communication style that you're completely unaware of or it's opaque to you. Like I love what you said about students and like childcare because so often it's and unfortunately it's people are so understaffed and underpaid these days and class sizes are so huge, but like ideally you'd have a teacher who can actually learn how do you learn, right? They'll spend some time getting to know what is your learning style, like how do you really thrive? Because you have students who, as a teacher myself, for university, when I have undergrads coming in, I can tell some people are like, you're zoning out. Like it's hard for you to focus when you're hearing someone speak. You need a visual. So I'll make a PowerPoint. I'll make sure there's visuals up for you. Okay, but some people need a bit more of a flow. They don't just want to listen to unbroken, uninterrupted speaking. And yes, there's an aspect to developing that discipline. But on the other hand, like if we're having a small class size, it's actually very lovely to take some time to understand what's the best way to support someone so they can feel empowered to relate.
Yeah, 100%. And I even like to think of all these things as well as like a deconditioning tool, because if somebody has a tendency to, quote unquote, like some people will tell me like, "Oh, I learn slow." And I'm like, "Oh, that's how you perceive it? Well, based off of your mind body type, it's saying that as you accumulate things, they actually land and they stick. Whereas
Mhm.
other people who seemingly learn quickly, it comes and goes on a whim." And so just,
Mm,
like, understanding something like that can allow someone also to, like, perceive themselves in a new way that's not about judgment, but understanding that breeds peace.
yeah, yeah,
And this would go back definitely to, like, working out and exercise too with people and working with astrology because that's become, like, a lot of what I do actually, it's it's like it's magical in the way that I'm holding it, but it's, like, actually, somebody's older and their hip needs to, like, get stronger, right? It's, like, sometimes, like, very, very simple, and people who are, like, of the nature of water or in our temperament theory, we call it, phlegmatic, you know, they they're not inherently motivated by a result. And so
mm,
when people are trying to accomplish something and they just wanna get the result or they wanna be, like, motivated because, in our culture that's, like, really, really popular to, like, watch, like, a David Goggins video and just,
right,
"Oh, I'm so motivated," and it's like it just doesn't last for them, and it's actually not sustainable at all. They need to connect to something that is meaningful for them emotionally, and that is what drives them. So all this time, they're like, "Oh, I want the result of losing some weight or trying to, like, get my body in a certain way," and I'm like, "Well, that's just a result. What is the feeling that you wanna experience, or what are you devoted to that's making you move in that directionality?" And until you've done that and understood that's just your primary orientation, then I wouldn't come to any conclusion about how good or not you are about being, consistent, and I think this would also very easily go into people's, devotional practice with their ancestors or their practices with their spirits. Like, what is driving you and what is your mind body type? And how do those things allow for clarity that makes things way more simple?
that's so beautifully said. I'm really taking in it's been on my mind a lot, is just, like, how do we actually, um, I was thinking about this earlier, which is, what is divination? Like, what is a consult? Like, what are you doing when you're doing, like, an astrology session or when you're reading for somebody? It's not just telling them things from your training, and it's not just telling them things that your spirits are telling you to tell them. It's also being the literal diviner. You're the medium, you're the interpreter, you're the person between your spirits and that person's spirits and them. And you get to decide how some of those messages are conveyed based on your skill and based also on, like, where is your intuition in your body in that moment, of how will they receive it so it is medicinal. Because my spirits phrase things in certain ways where I'm like, I don't think that metaphor will land on this person. I don't think the way that you're like they're saying it more for my sake, so I understand because that's how we communicate with each other. But I need to tell to this person a different way so it actually becomes something actionable. Like when they come away from the session, they feel empowered to actually um embrace that and do something with it. Like you were saying, like how does it, because the motivation will leave, and like that kind of, oh, I'm so excited I saw that David Goggins video. Like that will eventually fade. You'll go back to your regular life and you'll still feel bad again, as opposed to, what is this achievable goal that I'm looking to do? Like even taking time to digest that with your spirits and offload some of that stress into becoming like manageable, as opposed to just kind of like, it has to be this world changing thing right now, otherwise I failed.
And also, I find that it just changing their orientation towards things allows them to be themselves rather than allow the conditioning field of the world to implement things on them and then they're being reactionary to it. And that's one thing I definitely find, especially with like so-called discipline or consistency, people have felt like kind of oppressed by it in some way. And
Mhm.
so, like in that feeling of oppression, they're kind of like, well, I'm just going to flow or I'm just going to do whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And we definitely don't need to be mimicking the overculture that's unhealthy and very ill in some way. However, is that the true you? Like, you can never truly be authentic and be yourself by not wanting to be something else. It's about,
Mhm.
like, going inward and actually understanding who you are and what you are and moving from that place. And from that place as well, it also erodes and removes the capturing of the system that we're in, whether we call it capitalism, white supremacy, whatever we want to call it, I just call it capturing. So I also find that working with the astrology in this way allows people to remove the capturing from their systems so that they're not encapsulated within the system. And that also allows them to practice and play and be curious in a way where I know pretty much everybody's ancestors feel really appreciative that they can just come to them in a more authentic and present moment way rather than all these limitations and restrictions and feelings of oppression that they bring to the table sometimes.
Totally. Or like how do we contribute to that? Like how do we become our own that's what I was thinking about with the whole surveillance thing, and maybe I'm getting a little Foucauldian with it, but like um just like how do we become our own jailkeepers?
Mm.
Mm,
And
mhm.
in the practice of continuing to feel um like I know when I get in my head where I'm like, "Oh, this is so awful. This always happens to me. I'm such a victim." Like, I know that, it's right to recognize when you're wronged, and it's an important step, but, like, what are you gonna do about it is the next question, because otherwise you're just spinning, right? And it can start validating certain kinds of behaviors that keep you in that mentality instead of taking you out of it. Like, I think it's so important and such a powerful thing to recognize, like, I've been wrong. Like, I'm not gonna be my head in the dirt anymore. Like, this is something that has happened to me that's negative, and swallowing it and pretending it's okay is not doing me any favors. Like, it's important to recognize when something has affected you negatively. But, like, the next question, like, the thing that actually brings, I think, power to the situation, as you're saying, is like, what's your next step? And the next step can be ask for help. It can be like take some time to speak to somebody who knows better or who's been through it too, and who understands how hard it is to break that habit. But I really appreciate what you're saying. I've been very moved by how holistic that approach can be, because I'm aware that medical astrology is its own field. But what you're talking to, what you're speaking to very eloquently is how do we approach not just like healing from a holistic perspective, but from the understanding that there is so much more always to be done, um, and that can be a journey that it literally will work if you are consistent with it, but not in a sense of shaming yourself for the inability of like falling off. Like I think about meditation all the time. People think like, "Oh, I'm not meditating because I always get distracted." It's like no, that's the proof that you are meditating because you recognize you're getting distracted and you put your mind back to it. Like that's kind of how it goes, as opposed to thinking it has to be this perfect, flawless, like empty mindedness thing from the beginning.
Oh my gosh, meditation. That's a whole top.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna go down that pathway for a second.
Yeah, yeah, please.
Meditation, yeah. So in like all the ways that I've learned, because there's many ways and there's many yogas and there's many things, many types of meditation, even outside of yogic practice. The way that I've been taught about meditation, which also is not the best word necessarily, which I think we all know that here, is that it's really a process rather than like go do that thing. We don't meditate. You enter into a state. That's like a state of being.
Yeah.
Meditation, which we would call absorption. But really it's about starting with your body and then doing like the process. If it was a process, it would be starting with movement and then connecting with the breath and then removing the senses and then concentrating until you enter into the state of meditation. And I just find that when people don't when we're presented with just the idea of, like, meditation, most of the time people are like, "Okay, I'm gonna sit down and try to do nothing." Based off Ayurveda, we would say that's actually disturbing the mind. Like, that would be the last thing that we would have
Mhm,
somebody
mhm.
do. We would not have them sit down. Maybe we would even just have them do pogos, which is to say just jump up and down for 3 minutes straight, and when you're done jumping up and down 3 minutes is kind of a long time if you're not, like, really, like, with it, but jump up and down for a little bit, and when you're done, follow your breath and get with your breath and synchronize your breath, and then I want you to light a flame and just stare at the flame, and then maybe we give a mantra, and by that time, we've allowed the the information which usually gets stuck in the brain mind to move through the body mind to direct itself through the breath, and then to internally direct itself through the breath, to externally direct itself towards a single, point, or maybe 3 points, or maybe 5 points. It doesn't have to be 1 per se. So just inviting people to notice how I'm like, we're descending into the state of meditation is what we're actually
Mhm,
doing,
mhm.
and so just inviting people into thinking about it like that, because again, like what I was saying about the judgment thing, people will be like, "Oh, I'm not good at meditation." And I'm like, "Oh, dear one, you've been just misinformed about what quote unquote meditation is." And so it's not that you're not even good at it. It's just that there's a certain
Totally.
procedure to it, and maybe you haven't been informed in a way that is quote unquote right, whatever that.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like even with the, the meditation stuff, like working with people on like mediumship and stuff, I'm the first thing I tell a lot of people is like, okay, the thing you got to eliminate from your vocabulary is the phrase "I can't hear spirits."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Same with meditation. It's like, I'm bad at meditation. No, get that out of your brain right now.
Mhm.
Because I'm like, we're not talking about, good or bad. Like, we can get there eventually. It's the matter of, you got to just accept that you can do it. And it goes back to that whole thing of like, will the will the head receive medicine? Or like,
Mhm.
will the person be in the state where it's like they're not on some level resisting their own desire or resisting their own thing? Like this finger you were saying with becoming your own jailer,
Mhm.
or like not being with it in some other way. It's like you gotta just be with it.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really, you know, beautiful process of like that you were describing of just somatic disruption and then like actually like descending into that state.
Mhm. Yeah, and whenever someone starts to move forward in that process, just knowing that if you start to feel like that feeling or that idea comes up of like not good enough or something like that, then you just take one step back. So you just go back to the movement, or you just go back to the candle, or you just go back to the breath, and
Mhm.
just knowing that through that you're also learning to be flexible through that act, like, it's like, I feel this reminds me of, like, people that I see in the gym sometimes, and they're just, like, they're going really hard, but it's like, they're not actually strong through the whole range of motion. It's like they're strong at end ranges, but there's
Right.
actually, like, a whole spectrum of strength that you have within yourself that you can experience if you can orient different and allow yourself to experience it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is beautifully well said.
Yeah, yeah, really well put. That, I think about that a lot even in I love what you were saying about meditation. It's like, you've just not been even informed of the best practices. It's not that you're bad.
Mhm.
And here too with, like, the range of motion, right? Like, I mean, I experienced this myself so many times. It's like, "Oh, I think I'm not good at something." And it's just like, "No, or I think I've mastered something," and then my friend slows me down, and it's just like, I can tell that the range is weaker in the middle. Like, you're good at the ends, but you're not like, there's a struggle in the middle, so just put the weight down. Like, don't no number go up, but just put it down by 5 pounds and, like, do it well so that actually every part of you is getting activated.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. Shout out to who's doing that. That's such good work, and yeah, I think it's good work too for especially for people who are starting to work on their mediumship where sometimes there is like an experience that kind of like they get flashes of insights or they're like directly experiencing things or they're not. And
Mm.
like even in that, there's like stages or spaces and places where they can start to like flex that muscle and learn how to um mobilize through that experience or through that spectrum that can allow them to feel, yeah, more confident, but also understanding that by doing it, it's also always action oriented. So it's not that I can or can't do it, but that I'm actively doing it and like allowing the process to be um, what yields the results rather than trying to get to the result itself. Because there's so much more wisdom in that as an experience and process.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah. Medical astrology.
What does getting a medical astrology reading from you look like? So if people are listening to this and are curious, like, what can they
Mhm.
expect?
Yeah, they can expect to know that whatever they're putting in the intake form is actually informing what's gonna take place.
Mhm,
Because yeah, sometimes people come to me, like I said before, for
mhm,
very simple things like, actually, I've just had this low back pain and I can't sleep the best. And since I'm trying to work on my mediumship skills, if I can't sleep the best, then oftentimes I'm agitated or irritated or I can't concentrate. So we just work on the low back and we maybe correspond that to what's going on in the chart and understanding that there's multiple areas of life that represent the low back, and what area of life is that in the chart, and how
Mm,
are we going to equip you with some movement practices and maybe even some statements to ponder on and contemplate while we do that movement in order to remediate what's taking place there, but also knowing that there can be an oil that's made specifically for that for them in their chart as well. So just yeah, again, like just the full spectrum of what is the physical movement, what is the emotional and psychological um expression of attuning to that movement, and also what is a more subtle remedy that we can utilize where it's not necessarily just body based, but it's still getting the job done as well. Or it could just be, I've had this chronic illness for years now, and is there something in my chart that's showing that's that's blocking my pathway or hindering me in this process, as well as does it show in the chart when this is going to end? I feel like that's something that people really like to lean towards, and oftentimes that conversation doesn't even necessarily end with, "Here's the date that it's over with," but, like, really understanding what process they're moving through so that they can feel at peace with what situation is taking place. Something that I've been developing for about a year and a half now too as well is just surgery dates. Like, doing a
mm,
combination of finding surgery dates for people and then, working with geomancy to make sure that everything's okay with the surgery date, and that's been, like, quite phenomenal because it's not even necessarily to my own doing besides my ability to listen, but I feel like my spirits have been really helping me formulate a system of finding surgery dates, and that's been, like, really, really powerful for a lot of people who have had botched surgeries in the past, and it's something that, yeah, people oftentimes probably don't even think about with astrology to just go and check and see if, like, this is the right day for surgery. Most of the time, it's just about avoiding the wrong time and the wrong day, to be quite honest. But yeah, I've been developing that for the last year and a half, which has been a really lovely iteration of multiple practices. Um,
mm.
Also, sometimes I feel like people come to me and they just want to talk about what's going on with their health on a really simple level. So okay, like this is my diet and this is how I'm thinking about diet and here this is what I'm doing for my exercise routine and how many days I'm doing it and these are the herbs that I'm taking, and me just allowing myself to guide them in order to refine it and also learn how to think about working with these things. And that could be on a natal chart level, which is to say something having to do with working with the predispositions that they come into this life with or their ancestral inheritances, or it could be the solar return chart. So like this year, like I want to do something new with my health. What's a routine that would work for me based off of my natal chart and then a few other techniques and then also the solar return chart so that we can get the freshest iteration of what is true for me to do right now rather than just what has been ideal in the past or what I think will work because it's worked in the past before as well. So those are a few ways that I work with medical astrology. I know when we're done with this conversation, like 5 more will pop up, but
Mhm.
for the moment, though.
Yeah, 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 totally. No, that's wonderful. I love the, even just the picking good days for surgeries and things, like, there's so yeah, I'm excited. I'm gonna make sure I send lots of people to you
Mhm.
because that comes up a lot for me in readings, and
Mm.
I think that is such a more comprehensive way to look at it than just kind of, like, general avoiding of certain things. I will narrow it down to, like, months, and
Mm.
generally, like, is it a good taint this particular day, and I can check with spirits about that, but I love the idea of, like, looking into their specific chart compared to the day too.
Exactly. It's been, like, blessings. It's been, like, perfection coming through with that, and so, yeah, it's just been a blessing to receive the ability to start to see this in a way that yeah, like, I haven't actually been, like, directly taught by a human, and it's just been, like yeah, it just reminds me continuously that yeah, just feeling into the knowing and allowing the truth to move through, and settle in. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yeah, and then also one thing that I've also been doing that's been really, really nice is one of the offerings that I have is called the Gifts of the Horoscope, and this
Uh-huh.
has been really, really interesting because I will do, like, before I do a session, like, I will With this session specifically, I do like a specific technique or a specific variety of techniques from a very like linear, logical perspective. Of course, things come through during that moment. But then after I'm done doing all the technique, I will drop in with the chart and with all the things that I've written out and like allow some things to come through. And so I've really gotten some of the most innovative remedies that I've ever had for people through that process. And so that's been really, really beautiful. It's not just medical when I do the gifts of the horoscope, but most of the time I'm finding that there is some medical things coming up or some things having to do with health overall. And so
Mhm.
that's been really yeah, it's been really enriching and it's always like a learning curve that I'm on because I know these things have been done in the past, but I've still yet to meet someone who's doing this very particular combination of things. And so it's ever evolving. And so also for people to know whenever you show up, that's also adding to the medicine and that it's going to be presented in that moment and also through time for others as well.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, y'all have brought a lot out of me today. I really
Since
I
you talk
like
all day.
yeah, totally.
Yeah. I guess my final question for you is I'm very curious to hear about your astrological wellness program because I feel like that ties together
Mm,
so much what we're talking about
mhm.
today, and it's been something that I know is. I mean, I've heard a lot of people from my clients who come for pharmacy readings been really curious as to what would a wellness program look like if with someone who's also spiritual, who's minded, who can give you suggestions for speaking to your ancestors, for health, for coaching, all these kinds of things. My best friend Maria does it as well. She's starting to launch her own coaching business. That will be very similar. But I'm curious as to like what's because you mentioned that you do diet types, you do herbal suggestions, you do
Mhm.
exercise practices, right? But like what does that look like for you, and how do you figure out how you're gonna tell a particular student how will you help them integrate it into their lifestyle no matter where they come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I always do is just, again, check with the temperament because that's the most important thing for me is foundationally speaking. Like, okay, what's going on with the temperament here? And based off of that, there's going to automatically be a plethora of things having to do with herbal suggestions, things having to do with how to adjust the diet, even sometimes, well, depending on the person, of course, like when to take the medicines, things like this. So that's usually the first week is usually talking about how do you orient towards health and wellness and what does your day-to-day life look like and then giving them an overlay of what what they need as their base medicine. And so when I say base medicine, when we talk about the temperaments, the misages, and I didn't even say them before, but the earth type, let's call it, is going to be called melancholic. And then we have phlegmatic, which would be considered like the water type. And then we have sanguine, which would be considered like the air type. And then we have choleric, which is considered to be like the fire type. And so, based off of those things, let's say somebody is choleric, which is to say they're of the nature of hotness and dryness. If they're of the nature of heat and dryness, then what they need to know in the very first conversation is to understand what is that which is soothing? What is that which is cooling? What is that which is moistening? What is that which is unctuous, yummy, makes you feel affectionate, makes you feel connective, makes you feel disarmed and not as harsh? Like these things are going to be the things that are medicinal to you. And so, how can you allow that to start to just diffuse through your whole life? How are you being touched by your partner? What is the flavor of the food that you're eating? What temperature of water are you drinking? How much oil is in your diet? How do you treat yourself when you are working out? All these things will just start to diffuse through their whole existence. Just that in and of itself is oftentimes how I start in the first week. And then from there, because most people that come to me are like very like result oriented and not necessarily that many um magical practitioners are coming specifically for this thing, which I really would love if more people were coming from that angle because there's so much more that we could do when you're tapped in that way. But the following weeks after that will most likely be movement, diet, and then herbs. And just understanding what just understanding what would be good for you to work with. And also, whenever I do this practice with people or I have people in this container, they also have access to me so that we can create a rapid feedback loop on how are you experiencing these things, because the more someone experiences them, the faster I can point them in a direction and also understand, like, how are they actually moving through the process itself. I think that's really the key to it all. The key is to be with them in a way in which I guide them towards their own self-leadership through self-understanding through the astrological chart in whatever goal or aim that it is that they have. And in this context, with people being magical practitioners, that would just be even more elaborate. So when you're in front of the altar, like, is there movements that you should be doing in front of the altar or with the altar? Like,
Mhm.
like, it's like, yeah, I wanna put a bowl of water on my altar, and I also wanna make sure I have elements that represent earth, water, air, and fire, but can I even hear when my spirits want me to, like, just embody that element and, like,
Mhm.
show, like, reverence and praise and gratitude through the embodiment of that elemental force, which also oftentimes will allow us to attune to simple things like, "Oh, like, I'm seeing, like, people around me are having a difficult time. No wonder my ancestors were telling me to, like, embody fire and allow yourself to metabolize that which will come for the rest of this week." And just being
Yeah.
attuned in that way, I just feel like, yeah, it just allows us to have a different form of self-leadership that pervades everything in all of our relationships, as people say, and that is, like, what's gonna create wellness in our lives, and in the lives of others that we touch. And the primary tool that I work with to start with is the astrological chart while we're going through that process.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
That's brilliant. Yeah, even just starting it in that way by looking at, like, what does this person need? What should they be aware of? Because they may not be, if that's kinda how they approach it because of their temperament, they may not even be remotely conscious that that's how they approach their lover, their best friend, their teachers, their spirits, right, when they make petitions.
Right, exactly.
And so, like, I think a lot about when I need to be really intense and even harsh, or I need to be very commanding, like certain things that I put on my tongue or certain things that I eat beforehand to make sure that energy is in me. But when I need to be cooling and pacifying and very sweet and almost like the person will not really receive the medicine unless I am very um more diplomatic, but just very encouraging. Like what they need is that kind of emotional connection. Um
Mhm.
the my Eastern European taskmaster side is not going to be helpful at the moment. So I have to be very aware. It's like, what are you doing? Just go up. Like, I have to be a lot more like aggressive in how I phrase it. But it's all parts of us. All of us contain all those things. It's just in different measures. And it's cultural too, right? In addition to
Mhm.
the way that the stars affect you. So I think you put it so brilliantly because you are showing somebody that medicine of how they can also teach somebody else to that program.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, you got it spot on. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I would say about that. And there's so many more things to say. And I'll probably be writing now for the next 2 weeks about all these things that are coming up and coming alive. So thank you for even
Mhm.
listening to me. I appreciate it, Takoza.
Of course. And Cameron, you can anytime just you can come back and start a whole other chapter of a discussion because really the floor is yours whenever you like it.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be back.
Well,
Same.
folks, if you would like to benefit from the gifts of the horoscope or mentorship of personal development, the astrological wellness program, the medical astrology reading, general consults, solar return consults, you even do like really cool Saturnian work as well. If people are looking to understand that planet in their chart, please check out cadreamplanet.com. Uh, so much bounty. I mean, you've been studying so many traditions and integrating them into a beautiful kind of holistic perspective. Yeah, I'm really in awe of your knowledge, Cameron. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Takoza, appreciate y'all both.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. This is a real treat.
Now hit us with your music taste. Now that you've wowed us with your knowledge, give us a
Ah, yeah, yeah. So the song that I chose is a song by Jay Electronica called "Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind."
Hell yes. That's when
Mhm.
you know it's real. All right, Q, what's your Akashic record?
Today I have another one from All Them Witches, being the track "Call Me Star,"
And they do.
and they do.
Mine is DJ Jagola and DBBD's La Bateria. Because it's been in my head today, and that's how I feel after some good medical astrology practice.
Battery is completely recharged.
Yeah, it's a looping Italian lyric that just says the battery is completely recharged. Check out our Akash Records of the Frightful House playlist on Spotify if you want to do some of the strangest audiomancy of your life. Hit the shuffle button, see what happens.
You want to have the weirdest workout.
Genuinely, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've never tried that. I'm gonna have to do that now.
Oh my gosh, be warned, it may not be helpful.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Well, thank you, Cameron. And as as above, so below, we started talking about this beautiful prayer. And here is Ibn Arabi's opening prayer from the 7 Days of the Heart, if you wouldn't mind, Key.
Sure thing. In the name of God, the all-compassionate and most merciful, praise be to God for his bringing the most excellent success. I ask him for guidance to follow his path, inspiration to verify his reality, a heart certain of his truth, a mind illuminated by the providential awareness of his precedence, a spirit taken up with the ardent desire of him, a soul at peace from ignorance, an understanding radiating with the flashes of thought and its brilliance, an innermost heart flourishing with the spring waters of illumination and its pure nectar, a speech strewn upon the carpet of expansion and its clarification, thought exalted above the apparent finery of the ephemeral and its embellishment, insight able to witness the secret mystery of being in the setting of creation and its rising, senses maintained in full health by the constant coursing of divine refreshment, a natural constitution purified from the dominion of lack and its consequences, disposition completely responsive to the reins of divine law and its authority, a state at each instant conducive to his uniting and his distinguishing. And may blessings and peace be upon Muhammad and his family and his company, and the successors who came after him and the community of those who follow his path. May they be greeted with peace. The one desired is God, both in being and in witnessing, and he is the one intended without any possibility of denial or disclaimer, for he suffices me, the most beneficent trustee.